This story is set in a small American town where a family recently bought an old house. But a dark secret hidden in the house's past pulls them into a world of fear and danger. The Wilson family recently bought an old house on Willow Street. The price of the house was so low that they bought it without much thought. As soon as they entered the house, they realized that this place was different, something strange and unusual. The first night, when everyone was getting ready to sleep, 16-year-old Lizzie heard someone walking down the stairs. She thought it might be her father, but when she took a peek, there was no one there. The next morning, Lizzie told her father about this. He ignored it, thinking it was her imagination. But things soon started getting weirder. There was an old well in the garden of the house covered with an iron mesh. One night, the Wilson family heard someone screaming from the well. When they went to look, there was no one there. Lizzie talked to friends about it. One friend told her that the house on Willow Street was notorious. Years ago, a family had mysteriously disappeared. The Wilson family, John, his wife Anna, 16-year-old daughter Lizzie, and 10-year-old son Jake, had recently bought an old house on Willow Street and moved in. It was a 19th century house with big wooden doors, black window frames, and a lush garden. "This house is really wonderful," Anna said when they first saw it. "It needs a little renovation, but it would be a perfect place for kids." But the locals avoided talking about the house. Some called it cursed, while others described it as a ghost house. The first night, everything was quiet. John and Anna arranged their belongings in their room, while Lizzie and Jake began putting up posters on their room walls. But at about 2 a.m., Lizzie was suddenly awakened. She heard slow footsteps coming down the stairs. "Dad," she called softly. There was no answer. Lizzie got up from her bed, opened the door, and peeked in. A soft light fell on the stairs, but no one was there. "It must be Jake," she told herself and went back to sleep. The next day, when the family gathered for breakfast, Lizzie mentioned the night before. "I heard someone walking up the stairs," she said. "This is an old house, and it's common for wooden floors to creak," John replied, laughing. But Lizzie didn't understand. In the evening, when the children were playing in the garden, Jake pointed to the well. "What is that?" she asked. "It's an old well," said John. "It's probably dry by now." John tried to look inside by lifting the grate over the well, but he saw nothing inside. At night, when everyone was asleep, a scream came from the well. It was so loud that Anna and John woke up. "What was that sound like?" Anna asked. John looked out the window, but the garden was empty. The next day, when Lizzie was putting her room in order, she found an old book behind the wardrobe. It was a thick, leather-bound diary with yellowed pages and burnt corners. On the first page of the diary were written, "This house could be the end of you. Be careful." Lizzie felt a chill as she read it. She took it to her parents. "I found it behind the wardrobe," she said. John looked at the diary and laughed and said, "It must belong to some old owner. There is no need to think too much about it." But Lizzie took it seriously. She took the diary back to her room and began to read it. The diary said that 50 years ago, a family lived in this house. They too had come here just recently, but gradually strange things began to happen in the house. At night, the children heard someone whispering. Strange light came out of the garden well. And finally, every member of the family suddenly disappeared. On the last page of the diary were written just 3 words: "Don't open the well." That night, while Lizzie was reading the diary, she heard a slight sound on the wall of her room. It seemed as if someone was walking behind the wall. "What is this?" she said to herself. Lizzie touched the wall. There was a small door hidden on the wall, which was covered with paint. She called her brother, Jake. "Look, this door," he said. Jake used a knife to scrape off the paint and open the door. Inside was a small, dark room. The room had only a wooden chair and strange marks on the wall. A closer look at the marks revealed that they were made by human hands, but they were much larger than normal size. The next morning, Lizzie and Jake told their parents about the hidden room. John, looking at it, said, "It must be an old part from when the house was built." But Lizzie and Jake were sure that it was something else. As night fell, sounds started coming from the well again. This time, the sounds were clearer. It sounded as if someone was calling for help. Lizzie gathered courage and went into the garden and stood near the well. As she peered inside, she saw someone's eyes glowing inside. "Help!" came a slow, scary voice. Lizzie backed away in fear and ran inside the house. Lizzie and Jake now began to fully realize that something was wrong in the house. They both kept talking to each other at night instead of sleeping, but the fear was always with them. One night, when Lizzie was turning the pages of the diary, she found another interesting information. Another scary thing was written in the diary about the previous family. "What we saw will change us forever." In the dark of night, voices come from the walls of the house. These voices tell us that we are in the wrong place. If you are reading this, you must be just like us. Lizzie slammed the diary on her desk after reading this. She was trembling with fear, but she did not know what to do. The next morning, Lizzie decided to ask her parents to find out more about the house. They inquired with the neighbors on Willow Street. An elderly woman who had lived in the area for many years told them that this house had a very strange history. "This house never belonged to anyone else," the woman said. "This house has always been a trap. Whoever lives here soon disappears. People say that there was a family here who suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one knows where they went." Lizzie and Jake became even more frightened by this. They tried even harder to find out more about the house. One evening, while Lizzie and Jake were playing in the garden, they saw an old wooden box near the well. The box looked old and rusted, as if it had been there for many years. "What is this?" Jake asked when he looked at the box. Lizzie opened the box, and inside they found an old photograph. In the photograph were a woman, a man, and 2 children, the same people in the diary. "It's that family," Lizzie yelled. "It's the same people." On the back of the photograph was a note that said, "We opened it. We'll never go back." Lizzie and Jake were terrified. They understood that this house was not going to let them go. Now they were ready to fully trust their parents. Lizzie and Jake talked to their parents completely about the strange events happening in the house. John and Anna thought that all this was children's fear, but when they themselves experienced the strange events happening in the house, their thinking changed. At night, when everyone was sleeping, suddenly sounds of doors and windows closing started coming in the house. Screams were heard from the walls of the house. These sounds were so loud that the whole house started shaking. Lizzie and Jake were trembling with fear, but John and Anna decided that they would leave this house. They quickly started packing the things in the house, but as soon as they tried to get out of the house, the doors closed. "We can't leave," John said. "This house won't let us go." Suddenly, a deep, scary voice came from within the house. "You left us. Now you are like us." The voice was so terrifying that everyone trembled with fear. John and Anna, Lizzie and Jake all trembled with fear. The doors and windows of the house were closed, and strange noises were coming from the walls. No one had ever thought that this house could be so dangerous. "We can't leave it," John said. "This house won't let us out." Lizzie opened the house's diary again and began reading it. Now she understood why the curse on the house was so strong. There was another page in the diary on which was written, "Anyone who tries to leave this house will become like us. We are all trapped within the walls of the house." Lizzie and Jake became even more scared after reading this. They understood that there was something inside this house that was trying to trap them all forever. "We have to do something," Lizzie said. "If we can't go outside, we'll have to look for answers inside the house." Lizzie and Jake decided to dig deeper into the mysteries hidden inside the house. They went back into the garden and stood by the well. "This is the place," Lizzie said. "This is the place where everything began. What if we try to open this well?" Jake said. Lizzie took a deep breath. "We read in the diary not to open wells, but if we want to find a solution, this is what we have to do." Together, they removed the mesh of the well and tried to look inside. As soon as they looked inside the well, a strange wind came out, and their vision became blurred. Suddenly, an icy voice came from inside the well. "You have let us come out, now you will stay with us too." Lizzie and Jake turned away in fear, but Lizzie mustered up the courage to look into the well. As Lizzie looked into the well, she realized that something was glowing inside the well. It was not a human face, but a mixture of many faces, slowly moving toward her. "What is this?" Lizzie screamed. Jake pulled her. "We have to get out of here." But as they turned back, the sounds from the walls of the house grew louder. The doors and windows closed again. The house had now completely captured them. "You are ours," came a deep, terrifying voice. The Wilson family now realized that there was only one way out of this house. They had to fully understand the history of this house and take a dangerous step to break the curse. Lizzie and Jake decided to go to the old room in the house where the strange noises were coming from. They knew it was their last chance to uncover the secrets hidden within the house. John and Anna went with them, and together they decided to go inside that room. As soon as they entered the room, they noticed the same strange markings on the walls that Lizzie had seen earlier. "There's something here," John said. "This is where it all started." Lizzie opened the diary once again and began to read. On the last page of the diary was written, "If you can't understand the darkness inside the house, you will never be able to go out." Lizzie placed her hand on the wall of the room and realized that something was different there. The wall suddenly opened and a hidden door was revealed. "That's the same door," Lizzie said. "It will take us out." Once they open the door, the family must face the house's mysteries. Will they be able to free themselves from the house's curse? Or will they disappear like the rest of the family? Lizzie, Jake, John, and Anna pulled the wall together, and as the door opened, a dark room appeared. The room was very old, and the walls had the same strange markings, as if someone had written something there at the cost of their life. "This room, it's exactly like the one in the diary," Lizzie said, her voice filled with both fear and curiosity. Going inside the room, they saw a large old book lying in the middle of the room. There was something written on the top of the book, but it was very blurry. Lizzie picked up the book and tried to open it. As soon as the book opened, a loud noise came from the walls of the room, as if someone had pulled something out of there. Suddenly, a light came into the room, and the writing on the pages of the book became visible. "This house will never leave you. Anyone who tries to leave it will become like us. There is a curse on this house, and only those who understand its history can free it." Lizzie slowly turned the pages and saw that there was an old photograph in the book. The picture was the same family that was in the diary before, but now their eyes were completely black, and there was a strange smile on their faces. "This family, they became like us," Jake said. "Does that mean we can become part of them?" "No," Lizzie said. "We can stop it. We have to break the curse on the house." Lizzie looked at the next page of the book. It had a spell written on it to break the curse. But to read the spell, they would have to uncover one final secret hidden inside the house. "This spell can save us," Lizzie said, "but we have to recite it at the right time." John and Anna looked at each other, and both decided that they were ready to get out of this house at any cost. They knew that now was their only chance. As Lizzie began to recite the spell, a loud, scary sound came from within the house. Screams began to come from the walls, and the temperature of the room suddenly dropped. Everyone trembled, but Lizzie completed the spell. "What is going on?" Anna asked, frightened. "We have found a way out," Lizzie said. "We have to get out of this door quickly now." But as they moved towards the door, a deep voice came from the walls of the house. "You can't leave." A dark shadow entered the room and stood in front of everyone. It was the same cursed spirit that was trapped inside the house. "You decided to become like us," the spirit said. "Now you will live with us too." Lizzie and Jake looked at each other in fear, but they knew that if they backed down, they would be trapped inside this house forever. Lizzie gathered courage and said, "We are not afraid of you. We will break the curse of this house." Jake closed his eyes and said loudly, "We will leave this house." At the sound of this voice, the darkness inside the house suddenly began to dissipate. The voices from the walls stopped, and the light in the room came back on. The curse of the house slowly began to break. As Lizzie and Jake stepped out the door, they noticed that everything inside the house was quiet. Doors and windows were now open. "We're out," Anna sighed in relief. "We're saved." But as soon as they step outside the house, they realized that the curse on the house was not yet completely broken. The Wilson family left the cursed house on Willow Street, but their fear was not over. The air around the house was still heavy, and they knew that the power of the house was still there somewhere. But one thing they learned was that there is no way to escape fear and darkness. Unless you face that darkness, it will never leave you. The story ended with the family trying to escape the curse of the house. But in the end, they realized that facing the fear and darkness was the most important thing. With this ending, the story ends with a dark and scary message that makes the audience think that sometimes the things we fear will never leave us until we face them properly. The Wilson family left the cursed house on Willow Street, but their fear was still with them. The air around the house was still heavy and mysterious, and they knew that the power of that house was still there somewhere. John, Anna, Lizzie, and Jake often wondered if they had made the right decision. Were they safe after leaving the house? Or would the curse of the house still follow them? One night, Lizzie suddenly had a vision of the same dark faces she had seen in the first house. Their eyes were still black, and they slowly began to surround her. "Will we ever be safe?" Lizzie thought fearfully, but then she said to herself, "We faced that house. We tried to break that curse, and if we get another chance, we will be even stronger." The Wilson family decided that they would not let this fear become a part of their lives. They planned to make a fresh start in their new home, but they would always remember this experience. As they settled into peace in their new home, one day Lizzie looked outside and sensed a strange movement in the direction of Willow Street. "Is this the same house?" she wondered. "Will the curse ever end?" But now Lizzie knew that the greatest strength was to deny fear. And if she ever faced that darkness again, she would be even stronger this time. Because sometimes it's more important to face fear than to run from it.